I tested every budget vlogging camera to find the best ones. And I realized a good vlogging camera needs very specific features that most people don't know about. So in this video, I'm going to show you the best budget vlogging cameras with the exact features that you need depending on your style and budget. When it comes to vlogging, you obviously need something small and compact that you can always have on you, but a good vlogging camera needs very specific technical features and ergonomic features, and just because a camera says 4K or autofocus on paper doesn't mean it's going to perform at a high level, especially for budget cameras. And when features don't work as advertised, it simply leads to a frustrating vlogging experience and breaks your creative flow. But for that exact reason, two of the most popular vlogging cameras ever made were specifically because they made vlogging as easy and seamless as possible. And that is the Canon G7X Mark III and its slightly cheaper cousin, the Canon G7X Mark II. Also, if you want to make sure you get the best pricing on your camera gear, make sure to check out the links in the description down below. So obviously the G7X line is super compact, but it also has a shockingly good battery life for a compact camera. Both cameras have a super simple menu and button layout, making both of them a breeze to use. And both cameras have a super solid autofocusing system, which takes a lot of the stress out of shooting vlogs. However, make sure to do a firmware update on the G7X Mark III to fix some of the autofocusing issues that this camera had when it first launched. And both cameras have digital stabilization built in, so you never really get shaky footage, especially during walk and talk vlogging shots. One big difference between the two cameras is that the G7X Mark III has a much snappier autofocusing system and overall menu system, where the G7X Mark II is slightly slower in the menu system, but the autofocus is just as good. And both cameras have a built-in flash for photos and a super solid onboard mic for great in-camera audio, although the G7X Mark III also has an input for an external audio mic where the G7X Mark II does not. One thing that some of you might love or hate is that the flip-up screen to see yourself actually comes up to the top. I personally don't mind it at all. And the flip screen also has touch autofocus, so you can simply tap something and it'll snap into focus. Both cameras have a 20 megapixel 1-inch sensor, which is pretty similar to a high-end smartphone. However, both cameras are going to look way better than any smartphone for a few reasons. For starters, both cameras have those gorgeous Canon colors. The colors are very true to life with a hint of saturation, making the photos and videos look great even without editing, especially when it comes to skin tones and faces. These cameras are perfect for vlogs and selfies. And both cameras have an incredible built-in lens that goes from 24 to 100 millimeters, making it perfect for not only wide shots but also super close-ups, and it has an aperture between f1.8 to f2.8, which is great for getting that blurry background effect, but also this lens is very good in low light. The G7X Mark III shoots 4K video up to 30 frames per second, which is exactly what vloggers need, and it shoots Full HD up to 120 frames per second for 5 times slow motion. But the G7X Mark II only shoots Full HD at 24 and 30 frames per second, which is your standard vlogging frame rate, and 60 frames per second for 2 times slow motion. Now, which camera is right for you really depends on whether you want 4K or not, but you probably won't see a huge quality difference on YouTube. However, 4K does give you room to zoom in and play around with your footage, but not a lot of vloggers need that. I know we're talking about vlogging cameras, but chances are you're gonna want to take a photo. The G7X Mark III shoots at a ridiculous frame rate of 30 frames per second for photos, which is just as fast as video, so you'll never really miss a photo with this camera. But the G7X Mark II shoots at a much slower 8 frames per second, but it's still good enough for casual shooting and YouTube thumbnails. The kind of vlogger that should pick up a G7X is someone who wants something small and compact to always keep on them, and you want something that's going to look much better than your cell phone, and that's mainly because of the sensor and lens combination, along with the autofocus and the ridiculous 100mm zoom. The G7X line is probably the most hassle-free and compact way to vlog. However, outside of vlogging or use as a casual camera, the G7X line is pretty limited, and a lot of you guys might do better with a proper mirrorless camera that was also designed with vloggers in mind. And yes, you will get much better quality. And the next camera on this list has actually been one of the most popular cameras for YouTubers and vloggers in the last 5 years, and that is the Canon M50 Mark II. Design-wise, the Canon M50 is bigger, but with the bigger design, you also get much better quality. But it's still a small enough camera to be your everyday carry. And because it's a Canon camera, it still has a simple and straightforward menu and button layout. The onboard audio is just as good as the G7X Mark II or Mark III, and it also has an input for external microphones. Plus, it also has a flash and electronic viewfinder for photo shooters. And it also has a side articulating screen with touch autofocus. The autofocusing system also has face and eye detect, which is ideal for vloggers. The Canon M50 has an interchangeable lens mount and comes with a 15 to 45mm kit lens, which is sharp and a pretty good looking lens. However, it's not a great lens for low light, and the M50 only takes lenses from the older Canon M mount. However, you can find the lenses for the Canon M mount used at a very cheap price. What makes the Canon M50 Mark II special is the sensor. It has a 24 megapixel APS-C size sensor, and it's a bigger sensor than that in a point and shoot, thus giving you better photo and video quality. And it's actually a very similar sensor to that found in a much more expensive camera like the Canon 80D, Canon R50, and even the Canon R10. So despite the Canon M50 being a budget model, you're really not missing out much in terms of quality and resolution unless you really zoom in and pixel peep. And it has the same great Canon colors. Everything just looks beautiful right out of the camera, especially when it comes to skin tones. But the Canon M50 does have an older processor, which does have a pretty significant impact on the video quality of this camera. When it comes to video, it shoots full HD at 24 and 30 frames per second, even at 60 frames per second for 2x slow motion, but in 4K mode, it crops into your sensor, which basically zooms in your shot, which does make it harder for vlogging, and you need to hold this camera further out from you. But in 4K mode, it shoots 24 frames per second and not 30 frames per second. However, 24 is perfectly fine for vlogging. And it also shoots super slow motion of 120 frames per second, but only at 720p, which is pretty low res. And if you want to shoot photos, it shoots photos at 10 frames per second in RAW. And the Canon M50 has really good digital stabilization, making it super easy to get smooth footage and do walk and talk vlogging shots. The Canon M50 is not only a great fit for vloggers, but also content creators. Not only do you get a great vlogging camera, but also a great camera in general. So not only can you do sit-down talking shots like this, but also cinematic B-roll. However, if you're someone that wants a vlogging camera, but also a great camera overall for cinematic B-roll, the best deal for this kind of camera actually gets you more than just a camera. It gets you a vlogging handle, a wireless remote, and a microphone. You basically get everything you need to get started. And that is the Nikon Z30 Creator Kit. The Z30 itself is a small camera, but it has the grip of a DSLR, so it feels like a proper big boy camera in your hands without the bulky size. And it's not much taller than a point and shoot camera. The Nikon Z30 has a side articulating screen that also has touch autofocus. The autofocus is pretty reliable, but it can be a bit slow when it comes to tracking moving subjects. But for vloggers, it should be perfectly fine, and for the most part, it's as reliable as the Canon M50. And the onboard audio is super solid and the best of any camera on this list. But with the Creator Kit, you also get a Rode microphone that plugs directly into your camera, so you get a super solid audio feed in any situation. And the kit lens is way better than any beginner kit lens really should be. It's super well built with a smooth and solid focus ring, and the lens itself is super sharp and crisp, and it also has vibration reduction to give you ultra smooth footage. And the Creator Bundle also comes with a vlogging handle that can also double as a tripod, making this a much more versatile camera package. And it also has a detachable wireless remote, and it lets you control your camera from a distance, but also maneuver major settings. And inside the Z30, you have a 20 megapixel APS-C size sensor, which is surprisingly good in low light and at high ISO. I personally got great results vlogging at nighttime with just the city lights. Now, the Nikon colors aren't quite as warm as the Canon colors, but the colors are still very deep and saturated and look fantastic, but they do have a slightly cooler tone to them. But skin tones still look really good. And like I said, the Z30 has some of the best video frame rates and specs. It shoots 4K at 24 and 30 frames per second, but it also shoots full HD up to 120 frames per second. There's really nothing else you could possibly want from this camera, especially when it comes to frame rates. And it still shoots photos at 10 frames per second, making this a great casual camera, but also phenomenal for YouTube thumbnails. And I do realize 20 megapixels might seem a bit low, but you really won't see a major difference between a standard 20 megapixel or 24 megapixel sensor, and the 20 megapixel sensor is much better in low light compared to most 24 or 26 megapixel sensors. Overall, the Nikon Z30 Creator Bundle is the best vlogging package for the money right now. It has everything you could possibly need in one package, so you can get started on whatever you want to shoot right away. And if you want to get the best possible price on the Z30 Creator Bundle or any of the other cameras on this list, make sure to check out the links in the description down below, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.